Gentleman from California, Mr. McClintock, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we need to get some fundamental facts straight here, and let's begin with three numbers: 27, 58, and 89. 27% is the growth in population and inflation combined over this past decade, 27%. 58% is the growth in federal tax revenues in the same period, 58%. That's more than double inflation and population growth. That, by the way, that's after the Trump tax cuts produced one of the most prosperous periods for working Americans in our history. 89% is the increase in federal spending. It's the spending stupid. We have before us a budget that dramatically raises taxes and claims that we're going to reduce the deficit. But taxes and deficits are the same thing. They are the only two ways to pay for spending. You either take it out of a family's current earnings or you take it out of their future earnings by borrowing it. A deficit, a future tax, is paid for in two ways. We either borrow it from capital markets that then reduces the amount that's available to make consumer loans and have to be paid back through future taxes, or we simply print that money, which produces inflation. That's largely how this administration's financed its multi-million-dollar spending scheme. The result's nearly 8% annual inflation, costing an average family $3,500 in lost purchasing power. What it also means is if a family's put $100,000 toward their retirement, they've just seen $7,900 taken from them. It turns out all that free money that you folks sent out is very expensive, and Americans are paying it back at the gas station and the grocery store every day. Now, this budget repeals the Trump tax cuts. Now remember, we took in more revenues after the tax cuts. So great was the economic expansion that they produced. And they weren't tax cuts for the rich. The wealthiest 1% saw their share of income taxes actually grow. The average household saved between $1,000 and $2,000. The Democrats would repeal these tax cuts. The corporate tax goes to 28%, higher than communist China. But corporations don't pay corporate taxes. People do. They can only be paid in one of three ways: by consumers through higher prices, by employees through lower wages, or by investors through lower earnings. That's your 401k. Now, they say they'll make the wealthy pay their fair share. According to the Tax Foundation, the wealthiest 1% earn 20% of all income and yet pay 39% of all income taxes. That's double their fair share. But put that aside for a second. You are proposing to tax capital gains. What is an unrealized capital gain? It's the paper increase in assets that you haven't cashed in on. It's a tax on money that you haven't received. But don't worry, they say, that's just on those worth $100 billion or more. But once they've introduced this concept into law, how long will it take them to come after your pension funds earnings before you've received them? You know, this whole mess isn't the fault of taxpayers for not paying enough taxes. It's the spending that is robbing families of their disposable income, their savings, and their future economic growth. And I think it's disingenuous to compare this budget to last year and saying, well, the deficit's down and growth's up. Deficits are down only compared to the most irresponsible spending spree in American history that's produced the worst inflation rate in 40 years. Growth is up only compared to the lockdown left's draconian COVID policies that took a wrecking ball to our economy and utterly failed to slow the spread of the pandemic. Americans are now getting a taste of what socialism consistently produces. There are 2.1 million fewer Americans working today than before the lockdowns. American family purchasing power has declined since this administration took office. Inflation's at its highest rate in 40 years. Gas prices were up 40% before Putin invaded Ukraine. You know, the American people need to connect the dots between budgets like this and the conditions that they're now suffering before it's too late. I've got just one question. This administration's admitted more than 1 million impoverished illegal immigrants into the interior so far, in addition to 500,000 gotaways. That's roughly the combined population of Montana and Wyoming just since you took office. I'm wondering, how much is this costing local, state, and federal taxpayers?
One Thank you for the diatribe. I certainly,
I beg your pardon.
which piece of what you put forward can I respond to? You put a lot out there that we have disagreements with the way it's framed. We have 700
It's your
people.
policies that have caused these conditions.
We have
What's there to
700
disagree
people
about?
who are
That's reality.
billionaires or hundreds of millionaires that we're talking about, not regular Americans.
How much of
This
the 1.5
president will
million
not raise
illegal
taxes
immigrants that
on
you have admitted
anyone
into the
making less
country
than $400,000.
costing taxpayers? That is the question.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman's time has expired. If you'll let the witness respond, then we can move on. But you can't continue to debate her and when your time's expired.
I asked her a simple question. I'd like a simple answer. How much is this costing?
I look forward to the support you have for the 5% increase at DHS that will allow us to manage the
So it's in
southern
your
border.
don't know, don't care file. I get it. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired.